I did not enlarge his knowledge in this regard, but sought with some subtlety to draw him out. In a short time I became convinced of his absolute sincerity, for he spoke of his dreams in a manner none could mistake. They and their subconscious residuum had influenced his art profoundly, and he showed me a morbid statue whose contours almost made me shake with the potency of its black suggestion. He cannot recall having seen the original of this thing except in his own dream bas-relief, but the outlines of it had formed themselves insensibly under his hands. It was no doubt the giant shape he had raved of in delirium. That he really knew nothing of the hidden cult, save from what my uncle's relentless catechism had let fall, he soon made clear, and again I strove to think of some way in which he could possibly have received the weird impressions. He talked of his dreams in a strangely poetic fashion, making me see them with terrible vividness in the damp cyclopean city of slimy green stone, whose geometry, he oddly said, was all wrong. And here, with frightened expectancy, the ceaseless half-mental calling from underground, Cthulhu, Fatagan, Cthulhu, Fatagan. These words had formed part of that dreaded ritual which told of dead Cthulhu's dream vigil in his stone vault at Rulway. And I felt deeply moved, despite my rational beliefs. Wilcox, I was sure, had heard of the cult in some casual way, and had soon forgotten it amidst the mass of equally weird reading and imagining. Later, by virtue of its sheer impressiveness, it had found subconscious expression in dreams, in the bas-relief, and in the terrible statue I now beheld, so that his imposture upon my uncle had been a very innocent one. The youth was of a type, at once slightly affected and slightly ill-mannered, which I could never like. But I was willing enough now to admit both his genius and his honesty. I took leave of him amicably, and wished him all the success in his talent promises. The matter of the cult still remained so fascinating, and at times I had visions of personal fame from researches into its origin and connections. I visited New Orleans, talked with LeGrasse and others of the old-time raiding party, saw this frightful image, and even questioned such of the mongrel prisoners that still survived. Old Castro, unfortunately, had been dead for some years. What I now heard so graphically at first hand, though it was really no more than a detailed confirmation of what my uncle had written, excited me afresh, for I felt sure that I was on the track of a very real, very secret, and very ancient religion, whose discovery would make me an anthropologist of my note. My attitude was still one of absolute materialism, as I wish it still were, and I discounted with almost inexplicable perversity the coincidence of the dream notes and odd cuttings collected by Professor Angel. One thing I began to suspect, and now fear I know, is that my uncle's death was far from natural. He fell on a narrow-hilled street leading up from an ancient waterfront swarming with foreign mongrels, after a careless push from a Negro sailor. I did not forget the mixed blood and marine pursuits of the cult members of Louisiana, and would not be surprised to learn of secret methods in poisoned needles as ruthless and as anciently known as cryptic rites and beliefs. LeGrasse and his men, it is true, have been let alone, but in Norway a certain seaman who saw things is dead. Might not the deeper inquiries of my uncle, after encountering the sculptor's data, have come to sinister ears? I think Professor Angel died because he knew too much, or because he was likely to learn too much. Whether I shall go as he did remains to be seen, for I have learned much now. 3. The Madness from the Sea. If heaven ever wishes to grant me a boon, it will be a total effacing of the results of a mere chance would fix my eyes on a certain stray piece of shelf paper. It was nothing on which I would naturally have stumbled in the course of the daily round, for it was an old number of Australian journal, the Sydney Bulletin for April 18th, 1925. It had escaped even the cutting bureau, which had, at the time of its issuance, been avidly collecting material from my uncle's research. I had largely given over my inquiries into what Professor Angell said called the Cthulhu cult, and was visiting a learned friend in Paterson, New Jersey, the curator of a local museum and a mineralogist of note. Examining one day the reserve specimens roughly set on the storage shelves in the rear room of the museum, my eye caught by an odd picture in one of the old papers spread beneath the stones. It was the Sydney Bulletin I have mentioned, for my friend had wide affiliations in all conceivable foreign parts, and the picture was of a half-tone cut of a hideous stone image almost identical with that which Legras had found in the swamp. Eagerly clearing the sheet of its precious contents, I scanned the item in detail and was disappointed to find it only of moderate length. What it suggested, however, was of portentous significance to my flagging quest, and I carefully tore it out for immediate action. It read as follows: Mystery derelict found at sea. Vigilant arrives with helpless armed New Zealand yacht in tow. One survivor and dead man found aboard. Tales of desperate battle and death at sea. Rescued seaman refuses particulars of strange experience. Odd idol found in his possession. Inquiry to follow. The Morrison Company's freighter Vigilant, bound for Valparaiso, arrived this morning at this wharf in Darling Harbor, having towed the battled and disabled but heavily armed steam yacht Alert of Dunedin, New Zealand, which was sighted April 12th in south latitude 34 degrees, 21 west longitude 152 degrees 17, with one living and one dead man aboard. The Vigilant left Valparaiso March 25th, and on April 2nd was driven considerably south of her course by exceptionally heavy storms and monster waves. On April 12th, the derelict was sighted, and although apparently deserted, was found upon boarding to contain one survivor in a half delirious condition and one man who had evidently been dead for more than a week. The living man was clutching a horrible stone idol of unknown origin about a foot in height, regarding whose nature authorities at Sydney University and the Royal Society and the Museum in College Street all profess complete bafflement, in which the survivor says he found in the cabin of the yacht in a small carved shrine of common pattern. This man, after recovering his senses, told an exceedingly strange story of piracy and slaughter. He is Gustav Johansen, a Norwegian of some intelligence, and had been second mate of the two-masted schooner Emma of Auckland, which had sailed for Callao February 20th with a complement of 11 men. The Emma, he says, was delayed and thrown widely south of her course by the great storm of March 1st, and on March 22nd, in south latitude 49 degrees 51 west longitude 128 degrees 34, he encountered the Alert, manned by a queer and evil-looking crew of Kanakas and half-castes. Being ordered peremptorily to turn back, Captain Collins refused, whereupon the strange crew began to fire savagely and without warning upon the schooner with a peculiarly heavy battery of brass cannon forming part of the yacht's equipment. The Emma's men showed fight, says the survivor, and although the schooner began to sink from shots beneath the waterline, they managed to heave along their enemy and board her, grappling with the savage crew on the yacht's deck and being forced to kill them all, the number being slightly superior because they're particularly abhorrent and desperate, though rather clumsy mode of fighting. 3 of the Emma's men, including Captain Collins and First Mate Green, were killed, and the remaining 8 under Second Mate Johansen proceeded to navigate the captured yacht, going ahead in their original direction to see if any reason for their ordering back had existed. The next day, it appears, they raised and landed on a small island, although none is known to exist in that part of the ocean. And 6 of the men somehow died ashore, though Johansen is clearly reticent about this part of the story. It speaks only of their falling into a rock chasm. Later, it seems he and the one companion boarded the yacht and tried to manage her, but were beaten by the storm of April 2nd. From that time until his rescue on the 12th, the man remembers little, and he does not even recall when William Bryden, his companion, died. Bryden's death reveals no apparent cause, and was probably due to excitement or exposure. Cable advices from Dunedin report that the Alert was well known there as an island trader, and bore an evil reputation along the waterfront. It was owned by the curious group of half-castes whose frequent meetings and night trips to the woods attracted no little curiosity, and it had set sail in great haste just after the storm and earth tremors of March 1st. Our Auckland correspondent gives the Emma and her crew an excellent reputation, and Johansen is described as a soberly and worthy man. The Admiralty will institute an inquiry on the whole matter beginning tomorrow, in which every effort will be made to induce Johansen to speak more freely than he has done hitherto. This was all, together with the picture of the hellish image, but wouldn't it? A train of ideas it started in my mind. Here were new treasures of data on the Cthulhu cult, and evidence that it had strange interests at sea as well as on land. What motive prompted the hybrid crew to order back the Emma as they sailed about with their hideous idol? What was the unknown island on which 6 of the Emma's crew had died, and about which the mate Johansen was so secretive? What was the Vice Admiralty's investigation brought out, and what was known of the noxious cult in Dunedin? And most marvelous of all, what deep and more than natural linkage of dates was this which gave a malign and now undeniable significance to the various turns of events so carefully noted on by my uncle? March 1st, or February 28th, according to the international date line. The earthquake and storm had come. From Dunedin, the Alert and her noisome crew had darted eagerly forth as if imperiously summoned, and on the other side of this, the earth poets and artists had begun to dream of a strange, dank, cyclopean city whilst the young sculptor had molded in his sleep the dreaded form of Cthulhu. March 23rd, the crew of the Emma landed on an unknown island and left 6 men dead, and on that date the dreams of sensitive men assumed a heightened vividness and darkened with the dread of a giant monster's malign pursuit. Whilst an architect had gone mad and a sculptor had lapsed suddenly in delirium,